On this AVNation special, we sit down with Jennifer Davis about her new book, Well-Made Decisions, how you can make decisions well and encourage others. All that and more next on this AVNation special.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is an AVNation special, one-on-one with Jennifer Davis. This is Tim Albright with AVNation, with the AVNation special, talking with Jennifer Davis about her brand new book, Well-Made Decisions. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say thank you, and thank you to a mutual friend of ours, Erica, for connecting us. I have followed your career for a number of years. You obviously, connected years ago when you were with Layard and Planard.
Yeah.
You, though, had a very cool trajectory through the IT space, through the technology space, obviously the AV space. You're now with Learfield IMG College, and we'll talk about that towards the end. But one of the things that you've done really well is, organizational and organizational growth and building your teams. So today we're going to talk about your brand new book. Again, we call it Well-Made Decisions. First and foremost, I always try to ask authors this: what kind of drove you to this, and what was the catalyst for sitting down and typing out 50,000 some odd words?
Well, I'd like to say that it was because I've, had a lifelong passion in the subject. The truth is that it was a bucket list item combined with a pandemic. So quarantine plus bucket list equaled me sitting down to write a book. And it was interesting because I am a big fan of business leadership, thought leadership books. I read extensively, and I've written a lot. I've contributed to Forbes. I write a lot on blogs and on LinkedIn and various forums for work. And it was interesting. One day in this pandemic, I kind of squinted at this bookshelf of mine and realized that a lot of the things that I've read, the things that I have had a natural curiosity about, and the things that I've done in my own career centered on making and implementing decisions well. And I felt like I saw clearly that there was a bit of a gap. There is so much written, so much quality material on decision science, game theory, and making good decisions. And there are books written about execution and implementing and process and Six Sigma and leadership, biographies that tell stories of how leaders implemented choices. I'm kind of combining those two together. And my provocative insight in this process was that decisions, like invention, are 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And most of that kind of sweat-inducing work, if you will, happens after the decision is made, not before. And if you think back, maybe even on a personal level, although my book focuses on decisions at a kind of corporate or organizational level, so much work, effort, investment, communication, collaboration, data, analysis, monitoring, pivoting happens after the decision is made. And it's very important for us as leaders to kind of be empowered, maybe to move more quickly to decisions, knowing that so much of the work and the value and whether that decision is going to be, in hindsight, seen as wise and thoughtful, will be because of what happened after, not because of what happened in a conference room when a decision was made.
Yeah. Talk for a second about that process and why the decisions need to be made quickly, but also the kind of the feedback from the results of those decisions needs to get at least initial feedback, right? Because then you can adjust and gauge whether or not that was at least the beginnings of the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to know what you want to be about. This starts with a sense of culture in the business. It starts with the right talent density, as Reed Hastings from Netflix talks about. It starts with a sense of strategy, and hopefully something that has been documented, like a written down strategy of where you want to end up and what the vision is for the company. But with those kind of starting places, then it's really important for leaders, and I talk about it in the book, to break down decisions into smaller pieces, maybe experiments, pilots, ways that you can make reversible decisions, perhaps with a smaller investment, a smaller risk profile, so that you can learn. Because actually the ultimate benefit of decisions is that you open yourself up to new learning. If you decide to enter a new market, decide to invest in a new product, decide to work with a new client or customer, all those decisions that you might make actually put you on a path to learning more, and hopefully starting, the start of what might be a viable business in that new region, or a brand new product line that changes the trajectory of your company. So you want to get in that path of learning as quickly as possible. And so in the book, I talk about a concept actually that was really honed for me at my time at Amazon, called one-way and two-way door decisions. And the idea there is that just like approaching a door, decisions either are easy to reverse. You can open the door, you can walk through. If you don't like the conditions, you don't like what you see, you can easily go back in. Or they're one-way door decisions. Not that they're completely irreversible, although sometimes that's the case, but you walk outside and the door locks behind you, and in order to open it up takes a degree of effort. So things like setting pricing in the market might be a one-way door decision. You could change it, but it might be painful. Deciding to sell your business is a one-way door decision. You can't say, sorry, I want it back now.
Here's your money back.
Yeah, exactly. So you can imagine that, changing the color of a button on a website is a two-way door decision. And but again, divesting part of your business is a one-way door decision. Well, being very clear about the kind of decision that you're making can help you move more quickly to a point of, well, let's change the color of the button on the website and see if it leads to a better result. And if we don't like it, we can change it tomorrow. That helps free up decision teams and leaders to say, okay, then we probably don't have to put as much rigor into this decision, because part of the decision will be the outcome of making a change, and that'll inform it. And being very purposeful about the kind of decisions that people are making and the process for that. Again, a lot of that learning will come only after the decision is made. You've put something in the marketplace and the like. So how can you speed up that process? So anyway, that's some of the concepts in the book are really about unpacking that. And it's interesting. It's a book on decision making, but a small portion of the book is actually on the process of arriving at a choice. That kind of false finish line of like, wow, I'm glad we landed this plane and made a choice. But it's in recognition that that's a starting line of a whole other set of work streams and investment and teamwork that's required to not just make the right decision, but as a mentor of mine, Balaji Krishnamurthy, who is the CEO of Planer for many years, used to say, it's not just about making the right decision, it's about making that decision right. And I feel like there's a lot of power in that.
Talk for a second. How many of those one-way and two-way door decisions revolve around the investment? And this is both financial investment as well as human resource investment, time investment. How many of those, like at what point is there a tipping point that says, you know what, if you're going to spend, I don't know, 10% of your revenue or 20% of your revenue or 20% of your budget, it's a one-way door, dude, right? It's that's going to be whereas you mentioned the color of the button. That's going to take 10 minutes of a graphic designer's time. Okay, knock yourself out. Is there a tipping point there where revenue or time investment is involved?
Yeah, great question. I actually think there's several dimensions, and these become very very specialized choices for each business, depending on what the business is going through, their adaptability for change, that kind of thing. But I would first start with the impact to the customer. So if changing the color of the button is going to, again, I can't imagine this is the case, but it's going to throw a customer off and they're, going to have a bad customer experience, then you probably need to think about it. And that's why pricing, go-to-market strategies, product innovation are often one-way doors because they impact customer experience. And you just don't want to like give a product to a customer and then take it back, or put something in the marketplace that is going to be a horrible customer experience. So some of those things, I would say, first and foremost, ask through the lens of, obsessing about the customer. And even if that customer is an internal customer, whoever is kind of the downstream, person that you're trying to serve, I think it is a very important place to start. And then you're right, the impact of the business. How much risk does this actually create for the business? And every company's risk profile is going to be a little different. I know certainly coming out of the challenges of this year, people are maybe changing their risk profile a little bit. Maybe they've burned down their buffer savings or capital a little bit more than they wanted. So again, that risk profile will be very much a judicious decision by leadership on how much risk that the business can afford to take to get the learning and the upside of that investment. There are other dimensions as well. Leaders have to think about, and often leaders can be paralyzed by the fact that decisions can make and break careers as much as they can businesses. And so I think there's a risk profile for the business and there's a risk profile for the individual or the team. And what they want to take on.
So let me ask you about that, because I'm you and I are in similar positions in our full-time jobs. I'm also CMO of Converse Technologies integrator out of St. Louis, and I've learned, at least about myself, the older I get, I'm not going to say the riskier I get, but the less adverse to risk I get, because my view of life and my view, and this is going to be way more philosophical than probably you and I ever intended on this conversation having. Life is short, right? And our careers are short in really, yes, we spend 40 hours a week, 80 hours a week, depending on the week and depending on the company. But when it all comes down and we get buried in the ground, there are very few things that are going to be left from us, including our mistakes, right? So I don't know if you feel this or any of your cohorts feel this, but I feel like the older I get, again, not the riskier I get, but the less adverse to risk I get. Does that resonate with you?
It does. And I think part of it is because you have had a lifetime of experience of testing your own ability to make decisions and you and your team's ability to implement them.
Yeah.
And so what because you've lived it, you have lived experiences, it's almost like you've touched the stove and burned your hand. Well, now you know not to touch the stove. Yeah. That same kind of thing actually is applied in your life. What you've realized is this decision that were hand wringing about, actually turned out fine, or you were able to pivot, or come to find out it didn't end up being as big of a deal as you thought. And so whether or not you've reflected on that, and it sounds like you have, which is wonderful. The learning comes through that reflection. It doesn't, experience is not the teacher. Reflecting on the experience is the teacher. But as you reflect on that, you might realize, like this thing that I thought had a 60% probability of turning out actually turned out great. So maybe I'm not calibrated. Maybe I need to think about, maybe feeling a bit more empowered or moving quickly. And it could be as easy, like there could be baby steps here. It could be as easy as what could we do today to give us more confidence in the big decision that we think might be on the horizon? So what do we need to know today? And how could we find that out? And I'm a big fan of Stephen Blank. He wrote The 4 Steps to the Epiphany, and he's the guy who talks about you'll never learn anything in the office. You need to get out. And so, it could be that there's this key customer insight that you need to give you confidence in that decision. You're not going to get any further on that sitting in the conference room talking about it or sitting at your desk fretting about it. There's only one way to know. You need to go out and talk to your customer or do the market research, or again, whatever action, might be appropriate. And so that's really, I think, what experience and our reflection on that experience teaches us is that it's almost like GPS. You are stopped at an intersection and your GPS tells you to go left, and you're like, I hear some construction noises, I'm going to go right. You made a choice, and maybe it's the right choice or the wrong choice, but either choice can lead you to a destination. And you probably have gained more confidence in your ability to navigate after a decision to still get to your destination.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking with Jennifer Davis. Currently, she works for Learfield IMG College as their CMO, but also about her new book, Well Made Decision. I want to talk for a second, or I want you to talk for a second about kind of getting to this point with this book, because there's a lot in here that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you have gained knowledge and experience from your several different work experiences. We mentioned the fact that you worked for Amazon Web Services, you worked for Honeywell, you also worked in Intel, Planar and Layard. Talk for a second about the ability to kind of take from each of those incredibly successful companies, right, and their decision making process, and how you were able to kind of, synthesize those into this book.
We were talking about reflecting on experiences, and this has been a really, I think, really powerful, actually, for me to take a pause. You live your career and it's this close to your face every day. And so it's been really nice, actually, to go back and just open a document and start writing about my experience, as the 10th employee at an educational startup right out of college, and what I observed the leaders doing to gain alignment and to increase decision-making velocity in the startup. I could reflect on my time at the early days of Planar, when we were an embedded component manufacturer, and we were an ingredient brand, and the decisions to get into desktop monitors, which was our very first branded product, and what that felt like and what that looked like, and reflecting back on what I learned from it and have since applied, but might not have quite articulated why I felt that was important. And again, just going through the trajectory of my career and being able to reflect on what I've learned and who I've learned it from, honoring all of the mentors and colleagues and friends that have spoken into and invested in my career. And again, I feel like this book is an opportunity not only to reflect and get some of these ideas that I'm really passionate about out there, but it's an effort to give back. I have tried in my career to mentor and coach and be available, to others to share what insight might be valuable. This is a way to kind of do that at scale. And so, again, it's been a great opportunity to reflect, and something that I want to be more purposeful about actually moving forward. I don't know if I'll write another book, maybe, but I definitely will spend more time reflecting on my experience, because I felt like I was able to actually wring some additional value out of those past experiences in this past year.
I think that there's something to be said for those that will not only recognize that they are not a self-made person, right? We all have gotten experiences from others, and I am incredibly grateful, just like you are, of all the tremendous people who have poured into my life, both directly, right? These are personal relationships, but also, you mentioned a number of books. I've got, mine as well. These are ways that we can get spoken into from folks who have lived certain aspects, and that's why I still love to read, right? It's why you have to make time for that. So. I want to wrap this up here, and you were involved with talking about the female experience inside tech. I mentioned our common friend Erica Carroll, who connected us. Again, another wonderful woman that I've got a lot of respect for. We interviewed her for our International Women's coverage during the month of March, and that taught me a lot as a person. And I said this a lot during the month of March. I'm a straight white guy. I know where I am, right? I get that, right? And I know there are certain aspects and certain experiences that I will never experience, most likely. But I will learn from them, and I will learn vicariously through folks like you and folks like Erica and others. Talk for a second about kind of your involvement, and this is kind of a take on the mentorship as well, right? The importance of making sure that not only women's voices are heard, but also that as women in various technology industries and technology companies, you're able to and available for those that are coming up behind you to help them, right? To mentor them, whether that's through decision making process or just simply, how to navigate some of these waters.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. And I would say it's very important for everybody to be in a position of ally and advocate, no matter where, kind of what your demographics are. Everybody should be in a position of creating opportunity, and that should be true across the board. And not only is it the right thing to do for the individuals, it's really good business, and long term. Businesses and their customers will find value in that diversity. There's no doubt about it. There's tons of research on it. So it's a win-win to focus in on here. One thing I would say is that mentoring is very, very important, and we've talked. I've been the recipient of that and very thankful. But I've also been the recipient of something else that actually may be even more important than mentoring, and that is sponsorship. It's been said, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and there's truth to that. David Arvin in his book writes, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Mm. And there's something powerful about people knowing you well enough to understand your superpowers, understand your body of work, and then to be able to assume a different role, not just mentoring and speaking into your experience and coaching you behind the scenes, but actively sponsoring you and promoting you and advocating for you in rooms that you're not in. And so that's kind of the trajectory. I think what people can do is know your stuff. Jerry Perkel, the CEO of Planer, used to say that all the time to his team. Is like, I rely on you to know your stuff. Like, if you're my head of marketing, you're my marketing subject matter expert, and I expect you to know that stuff, which is great. And that's the role that I've assumed and loved. But knowing your stuff is only part of it. You need to know people who can advocate for you. My relationships with the CEOs I've worked with have been great examples of that. But then there's those broader networks of people like Erica Carroll and others, who we can learn from and be peer mentors. But then there's that sponsorship piece. And actually, Erica is a great example of this. Here we are, colleagues and friends. We helped found the Avixa Atlanta chapter of the Women of Avixa group. And I got to know her in that context. And she found out I was writing a book and actively has sponsored it, helped promote it to her network, and then called her friend Tim and said, you need to have Jennifer on. Like, and we've known of each other, but again, she moved from mentoring, you should call Tim, to sponsoring, I will call Tim on your behalf. Yep. And how powerful, like what a powerful example of what we're talking about. So the challenge that I would have for anybody who's in a leadership position or an influence of position of any type, whether you have the title or not, is look around your network for the people, see very clearly their superpowers, and then look for ways to actively advocate for them. You're in a meeting and somebody said, it'd be great if the company took on this project, and you think, I would suggest that we ask Tracy to do that because she has shown great skills in this. And again, it's that kind of sponsorship that really changes the trajectory of people's lives. And I think about my career in kind of two halves. There was the half where I was learning skills, I was getting my MBA, I was moving around to different companies, taking on different roles laterally to grow my skills like this. And I had a CEO who saw in me a lot of potential, and he put me into my first P&L role. He put me into my first C-level role. And what a difference that has made in my career. And it's put me on a different trajectory. And again, you can be that for somebody with the next project that you have awareness of.
Well, and I want to point something out here. You don't have to be a leader. You don't have to be a boss, quote unquote. You don't have to have reports to do that, right?
No,
That's the
no.
one thing. Yeah, that's also very important. Is some people get hung up on? Well, I'm not a boss. I'm not a leader. Well, yes, you are to somebody, right?
Well,
Um,
and here's the here's the secret. um, Leaders in your organization are looking for people who already demonstrate leadership.
yep.
And so if you're the kind of person that actively advocates for others, sees needs and connects the dots, um, brings forward initiatives, driven by data and customer insight, like you're leading from your part of the world, no matter what your role is. And again, if you're in an organization that fosters talent, it won't be long before people realize, like, oh, like she's underutilized, or he's underutilized in this role. And um, there'll be other opportunities for others to sponsor you too. So again, it's a very reciprocal thing. If you seek first to see how you can serve and advocate for others, it has a halo effect. And so again, it's a win-win kind of situation.
Absolutely. Jennifer Davis, thank you so much. Jennifer Davis, the author of Well Made Decision. How do people connect with you, and how do they get the book?
Awesome. Well, we are in a pre-sales phase right now through the month of April, and the book will be officially published and in hand in August, which will be here before I know it. And so more information you can find about the book at wellmadedecisions.com, which is kind of a blog I've stood up to promote the book and some of the related activities. I'm launching a scholarship program actually as a way to funnel some of the proceeds of the book. Again, in the spirit of giving back, I want to continue that theme. And people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Jennifer B. Davis on LinkedIn. I'm Jennifer Davis on Twitter, and I have a personal blog at www.jenniferdavis.com.
Very good, Jennifer Davis. Thank you so much for your time there. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv, and find several interviews like this, including our buddy Erica Carroll. You can check her out as well at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.